Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. In War of the Visions, I was thinking about making a video about the current global outrage flavor of the week, but instead I'll make the video that I was intending to make anyway, which is kind of first in sort of a mini-series of retrospective videos about Year 2 in War of the Visions JP. And this will be a list of the best and worst releases. Releases could mean anything, could be units or vision cards, or quality of life, or game modes, or whatever. But just kind of like the best things that I felt like were added to the game, and then the worst things that were added to the game. Alright, but let's talk about best first. First was Another Story. This is designed to ease new players into the game, and I think it does a good job of it. Story-wise, it's self-contained and not super complicated like the main story. It's kind of like classic Final Fantasy, while the main story is more tactics. And then play-wise, we get Lucio, a light element slash attack unit with an AP refresh Trustmaster. Did the game need this? I don't know, but if it helps new players, why not? And we always need new players. And then as a vet, I'm enjoying playing it because it's kind of a change of pace, both play-wise and story-wise. It should be coming out in Global fairly soon. I'll do a review of the unit then. Okay, next. Maybe not a surprise to people that know me, but it is selection quests and then their EX stages. I've sung the praises of selection quests many times before, but I'll do it again here. I think it's the best content in the game, and I am flabbergasted that they managed to do it with the lower rarity units. And then to add EX stages on top for more rewards and more value out of leveling the units. It's genius on top of genius. For the folks that want the closest thing to the console tactics experience, this is it, and they should aim for the complete set. Okay, next, might be controversial for me to put this in the positive side of the list, but EX jobs. I'm basing it off the moderate jump in power creep it ushered in, the appropriately scaled increase in generosity of materials availability, and the slow rollout of EX awakenings for older units. A year into the game was early for what was basically a new unit form, but it could have been so much worse. So much worse. Game balance was more or less maintained throughout the transition, which stretched over a year, which is pretty darn smooth. That's a hard thing to pull off. And there might be folks that think that the slow rollout of EX awakenings for older units is a bad thing. But in this case, slower was better, because not only did it give each unit more time in the spotlight, it gave us more time to work on them, and it also slowed down power creep. Okay, and then fourth was the second master abilities. These were not necessary, despite what some folks might say, but it's a nice gesture by the developers to basically give free upgrades to what a lot of players already had. This kind of thing is pretty key to keeping players happy. It makes them feel like they're getting a long-term value out of their investment. And then also, not locking the upgrade behind some like super high difficulty quest or some kind of new awakening material makes it feel even more like a gift. EX jobs don't feel like a gift at all, it just feels like a bunch of more work. And then the timing of the second master ability rollout is cool. It's coming right on the tail end of EX awakenings for all of the older units. So it's like units continually get showcased in waves, and it looks like it will be rolled out over time as well. And perhaps it will delay the next kind of true form that we get for units. Okay, and then the last top addition to the game of the last year is Oberon. He's an excellent unit, top 5 in the game, and then I'll talk about him in detail in his review. But it's almost more what he signals that is important about him, and that is the broadening of the game balance, both in terms of elements and attack type. For much of the life of the game, global players were like, we need more Earth units, we need more non-slash, non-magic units. And I was like, whoa, 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 do you really understand for what you are asking? The developers purposefully kept the meta limited in the early days of the game, focusing mostly on light, dark, and slash magic, so that players would have less to focus on in terms of pulling and building and beating content or like countering other PvP teams. The developers waited to release this top-tier Earth attacker, this top-tier Pierce attacker, until a good portion of the user base were pretty squared away in Light Dark and Slash Magic, before kind of shaking things up with the release of Oberon, and then all the other units that came along after him. And with his release, PvP takes a big step towards Golden Time. Okay, next let's talk about the bottom 5 releases of the game of Year 2. And the first one is going to be the Crystal Fest. Folks seem to think that because I explain why the developers did something, and then explain the context and history around it, that I am for it. I am not for the Crystal Fest banner, and I am not for Fest banners in any game. But apparently the only way that I can show that I am against it is to deny the reality of the situation. But the introduction of the Crystal Fest directly relates to the rising price of the game, which is one of the things that I am most concerned about with mobile games. It's something I keep a close eye on, and it's kind of more likely to make me quit a game than any other factor. Okay, next, the third worst release of the game of the year was Demude and then Corwell. The units are fine, and I like the idea of handout URs, but please take them out of the Hatcher standard pool. It's ridiculous to put them in there. Alright, next was Bahamut. This release broke a lot of people, including my beloved Mayachin, which I will never forgive. Half the pull rate, no guaranteed get 5-step, no ceiling, double price shards, and to be honest, not worth the price and heartbreak in the end. But thank God they never did another vision card like this again. But next is Barrett. I love having him and I love using him. He's lots of fun to play. But he is not a cost 90 unit, come on. Especially when compared with Cloud and Tifa of the same event. I understand why they made him cost 90. Even fewer people would have pulled for him if he was like lower. But yeah, give him a buff or something. He could be cost 70, and I really don't think he would affect like cost limited events that much at all. Okay, and then probably the number 1 worst release of the game was Dwayne. And he did 2 fairly damaging things to the game. One to both versions, and then one to just JP. But to both versions, he enabled Helena way too much. Before his release, she was strong but manageable, but after, they became the best 1-2 punch in the game, and maybe that's even true still now. And then what he did to JP was he was the last straw on the back of the patience of JP players, who are generally forgiving of mobile games. I still believe that they should have never released Dwayne and JP and left him a global exclusive. But a lot of JP players quit over Dwayne, and I think the controversy really negatively impacted sales of the Final Fantasy VII R collaboration, which should have been the highest sales in the history of the game, but instead it was half the previous high. But to end the list and then the video on a positive note, in the long run, this giant break brought on by Dwayne may be a good thing, because out of it we got an end to double price shards. I kept wishing for it from day one, and there was a real chance that it would never happen, but it did. It will sound cold of me for saying so, but maybe losing all those players was worth getting normal price shards, and then kind of moving the business model away from unit building, and then more towards Hatcher pulling. And yeah, we're already seeing actions being taken by the company to kind of make up for the loss of revenue by lowering the price of the shards. So like more like paid vision ore options, no pities on the fest banners, stuff like that. But yeah, the cost 100 rush and then the boycott by the JP players was a real wake-up call for the company. To base the business model of this game on part pulling and then part building was an experiment by the company. I think a lot of players were kind of shocked to see that in the very beginning. And I'm almost certain that the developers knew that they were asking a lot of the players, and maybe they were kind of seeing like how long they could get away with it. Maybe they were really encouraged by the great performance of the game the first year, and so ramped up the cost 100 release schedule. And that turned out to be way too much too soon, and kind of their entire experiment backfired. Unfortunately, as a result, the game will always have a reputation for being expensive to build units, even though it's much easier and cheaper now. But that was the risk the company took by implementing it from the start. But long-term health of the game seems good. They haven't had any like worryingly low monthly sales numbers, and I'm looking forward to the next big collaboration that will not be marred by controversy, and seeing if the game can finally get some breakout sales numbers there. And before anyone says I'm on the side of the company for hoping that it does well, we all want good sales because our experience as players will be better for it. The changes to hatchers and shops and whatever we are seeing is absolutely a response to the players, how they are pulling and building. Alright, that was my list of best and worst releases in War of the Visions Year 2. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.